What's up YouTube? Welcome to another video by Wrenches and Wrenches, and today I'm going to show how you can remove and replace your inner and outer tie rod ends. I'm going to be doing this on this 2003 Ford Mustang GT, and if you're wondering if your inner or outer tie rod ends are bad, I've already done a video on how you can check them, and I'll put a link to that video in the description box that's going to be right below this video. Now this car doesn't have a bad inner or outer tie rod end, but the reason I'm replacing is that it's just got normal wear and tear on the tie rod ends, and the steering response is not as good as when they were new. And since this is a sports car, it's a GT model, it's got a manual transmission, I decided to replace him to get that nice firm steering response that you get when you get them fresh from the factory. Okay? Plus, inner and outer tie rod ends don't really cost that much. If you can put the labor in yourself, it's not going to cost a whole lot of money to replace them. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is to block both your rear wheels. Next, you want to put your emergency parking brakes on, and then put the car in gear if it's a manual, or put it in, make sure it's in park if it's an automatic. Okay, next we're going to raise and support this side of the vehicle, but make sure if you're not using an air gun to take these lug nuts off, to loosen them before you raise this wheel off the ground, okay? Okay, here's a shot of your outer and inner tie rod end. As you can see, your inner tie rod end connects to your rack and pinion. I'll get a better shot of this later. And it's covered by this dust boot to get the dust and debris out and grease in. And it comes out here, and your outer tie rod end connects to this shaft at the end of it and connects to your steering knuckle. So what we're going to do next, we're going to use WD-40 or PV Blaster and spray this castle nut here and also this locking nut here, okay? And a quick note for people that have ever wondered how their toe adjustment is made and on their front wheels, it's made right here. Basically, a technician at the alignment shop loosens this locking nut, and then they get a wrench on this part of this inner tie rod end and they screw it in. Since this on this setup, this outer tie rod end is in the front of the wheel hub. When you screw that in, you pull it inwards and adjust your toe inwards, and when you turn this back and screw it out, you push out on this outer tie rod and adjust your toe outwards, okay? Okay, next you want to get a strong wrench on this locking nut and loosen it. Okay, next we're going to use a small pair of needle nose pliers to get this cotter pin out. You just strain the end of it, and then we should be able to push it through. Okay, now we get to loosen this castle nut. Okay, next it's time to get this outer tie rod out of the steering knuckle, and the best method I've found is that you just hit it with a hammer. Just get a hammer, hit it here on the steering knuckle part and not here. Just hit it here and it will break loose. If it doesn't break loose, you can always just use more PV Blaster or WD-40. And just repeat this step until it comes loose. It will come loose. Okay, now it's time to remove this outer tie rod end, and we do that when we go to remove it. We're just going to be turning this counterclockwise, and you're going to be counting every rotation that you turn it counterclockwise. So when you go put the other one in, you put in the same number of rotations. That way your toe adjustment is as close as to original as possible. I highly recommend you should get a alignment after you do this job, but you still want to do this so it's at least close enough to where it's supposed to be, okay? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 19, 20, 21. 21 turns it took to get this out of there. Okay, next you want to twist out and remove this locking nut. Okay, next we're going to use our pliers to get this clamp on this outside of this dust boot off and remove it. Next we're going to get underneath the car and remove this clamp on the rack and pinion side. These clamps are just one-time use clamps, and you need to cut them. And if you have a die cutter, you can cut them here. Also, you can just stick a screwdriver here and pry it open and loosen it up, and that way you can remove this boot. But I got these die cutters, so I'm going to just cut it. Okay, so before we completely pull this tube out, you want to make sure you get this breather tube out of your dust boot. Okay, now we can just completely remove this dust boot. Okay, and here's a look at our inner tie rod end. As you can see, this is pretty loose. Now, this doesn't mean that this is a bad tie rod end. because a bad tie rod end would have play here while if you push it back and forth, you would feel play. But this is just worn, you know, it's just normal wear and tear. But when you replace this and you get a new one, the new one is going to be very firm, and you're going to get that nice quick steering response that we're looking for. Okay, so now it's time to remove that inner tie rod end, and you need a special tool or an inner tie rod end removal tool kit that you can get from your local auto parts store. They usually rent it to you for free if you just give them a deposit. Basically comes with these 3 adapters for different tie rod end size, and then it comes with this connecting rod that you put at the end of these adapters to remove it. Now sometimes you have enough space down underneath the car to just use a wrench and remove your inner tie rod end. And actually on this car we can just use a wrench, but I'm going to use this so people can see actually how it's done. In fact, I'll just show it on our new inner tie rod end. Basically you find the right adapter and put it over your inner tie rod end, put it over this part, and once that's in, you just slide over this, over the shaft. When that locks in place, you just put your ratchet at the end of this and then turn it counterclockwise and you'll be able to twist this off. Okay, here we go. Here's our adapter. Here's our connecting rod. Make sure it's properly seated over this. Okay, next you put your 1/2-inch pry bar over this and then twist this off. There we go, free and clear. Okay, so what you want to do next is to get your old and new tie rod ends and put them next to each other. Make sure they're both the same length. As you can see, ours are the same length, but if yours are different, what you want to do is just put this old outer tie rod end over the old inner tie rod end. Just run it down the same number of turns you took to take it off, and then when you get that distance, then you can run this down over the new one, and then make sure that when it comes to about the same length, that's your new measurement, and you need to remember the number of turns it took for the new one to equal the old one. Okay? Okay, what you want to do next is to clean the threads on your rack and pinion where your inner tie rod end goes, and it's probably a good idea to use some blue thread locker on your inner tie rod end, okay? Next we line this up and start it by hand. Okay, next you get your torque wrench and torque this down to the proper torque spec. It's going to vary depending on your car's make and model. For this car it's about 80 foot-pounds. Okay, next it's time to put on our dust boot, and we got a replacement clamp. This is for you know, radiator hoses and whatnot, but if you get the largest clamp, it should fit over this and it should work fine, okay? Just slide this in. Okay, next we're going to tighten down this clamp. Okay, next we put this outer clamp on. Next we want to get our locking nut and run it all the way down. Next we want to put our new outer tie rod in. As you can see, this one comes with a grease fitting, which is nice, but since this one already had grease in it, I'm not going to put any more grease in it, and I suggest you don't either, because if you put too much grease, you're going to rupture this dust cover, and then dust and debris will get in, and then you'll be doing the same job again. And then we'll just do the same number of rotations it took to take it off, and which in our case was 21. So we're going to turn this in 21 turns, and then we're going to lock it in. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, and 21. Okay, next we put our new outer tie rod in through the steering knuckle. Next we'll put on our new castle nut. Next we torque it down, and then we put our new cotter pin through. Last but not least, we're going to tighten this locking nut. Okay, and that's all there is to replacing your inner and outer tie rod ends. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side, and then go get an alignment, and then we should be all set. Okay, so yeah, I hope this video helps people out there. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more like it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.